You know, folks, I have been sitting here watching the news come in, and I need to talk to you plainly about what is happening with this war in Iran. Not as somebody with a partisan axe to grind, as somebody who has sat in that chair, who has ordered strikes, and who understands what it looks like when a military campaign starts going sideways, because that is what we are watching right now. And I think you deserve somebody who will walk you through it honestly. Last Friday, the president stood in front of cameras and declared that Iran was finished, Navy destroyed, Air Force eliminated, air defenses wiped off the map. That was Friday. By Monday morning, 72 hours later, that same president was publicly requesting a 5-day pause. He framed it as the product of meaningful dialogue. Iran's response was immediate and blunt. There has been no dialogue with the United States. Let that land for a second. The nation dropping the bombs is begging for a break. The nation absorbing the bombs is the one refusing. Now, think about what that means in practical terms. The United States military consumes close to $1 trillion a year. It operates 13,000 aircraft and 11 nuclear-powered carrier strike groups. It fields the most sophisticated weapons systems any country has ever produced. On the other end, you have a country that has lived under crushing sanctions for decades. Iran's entire defense budget barely touches 2% of what America spends. No stealth aircraft, no fifth-generation fighters, no carrier battle groups. And that country just forced both American carrier strike groups to pull back over 1,000 kilometers from its coastline. We need to talk about how that happened. And toward the end, I am going to show you why the next 5 days could matter more than everything that came before them. Here is the honest truth about where this president finds himself. He is boxed in. He cannot push harder without dragging the global economy off a cliff. He cannot pull back without conceding the whole operation was a miscalculation. And he cannot keep doing what he is doing because the damage is stacking up faster than the wins. Just look at the last 4 days. Friday evening, he posted on Truth Social, suggesting America might wind operations down. Saturday, he reversed himself completely, issuing a 48-hour ultimatum, threatening to level Iran's power grid if the Strait of Hormuz was not reopened. By Sunday night, reports surfaced that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were being sent to open back-channel conversations. That deadline came and went Monday morning. No strike. Instead, the 5-day pause. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Iran's parliament and the very person identified as the alleged negotiating counterpart, flatly denied any contact and described the whole thing as an American scramble to escape a quagmire. 1 hour, the president declares total triumph. The next hour, he threatens total destruction. The hour after that, he offers a ceasefire. Then he claims talks that the other side says never took place. He called NATO allies cowards for refusing to help force open the strait, then turned around and asked those same allies for support. He told reporters ground troops would never be deployed, then added, "But if they were, I certainly would not tell you. That is not a plan. That is someone searching for an exit that does not exist. And every defense ministry on the planet is paying attention." But before we get to where this goes, we have to understand what broke. On March the 19th, a United States Air Force F-35, a Lightning II, conducted an emergency landing at a regional base after flying a strike mission over Iran. The pilot had shrapnel injuries. Central Command confirmed the landing but refused to specify what caused the damage. That same day, Iran's Revolutionary Guard released footage claiming a direct hit. 2 sources familiar with the incident confirmed to American media that an Iranian weapon struck the aircraft. If verified, this would be the first documented case of an F-35 sustaining hostile fire. The entire $1 trillion program is built on a single proposition: invisibility. The airframe's geometry and radar-absorbing coatings are engineered to make it undetectable to conventional radar. Iran did not bother trying to find it on radar. Iran used passive infrared tracking technology that detects heat from the engine instead of bouncing signals off the fuselage. The system reportedly responsible is called the Majid, a domestically developed infrared-guided missile platform. The jet was deep inside Iranian territory on a penetration strike sortie. That mission profile tells you Central Command believed Iran's air defenses were already neutralized. That belief was wrong. No image of the damaged aircraft has surfaced. The pilot survived, but the actual state of a $100 million stealth fighter remains unverified. Now here is where it gets serious for everyone watching. Japan flies F-35s. South Korea flies them. Australia, Singapore, the United Kingdom, and roughly half of NATO either operate the jet or have orders in the pipeline. If a nation under decades of economic isolation can track and hit this aircraft using infrared sensors, the pricing logic and strategic rationale for the entire platform shifts overnight. And the thermal signature data Iran's Revolutionary Guard captured during that engagement is potentially more valuable to Chinese and Russian counter-stealth programs than a decade of espionage. We will come back to why that reshapes the global balance. The F-35 was not the only loss. By March the 17th, more than 12 MQ-9 Reaper drones had been confirmed destroyed during Operation Epic Fury. Some were shot out of the sky by Iranian air defenses. Others were hit on the ground by incoming missiles. Each Reaper runs between $13 and $16 million. At confirmed numbers, that exceeds $200 million in drone losses alone. The Air Force stopped purchasing new Reapers back in 2020 because planners already recognized they were too slow and too visible against any real air defense network. They were built for counterterrorism, designed to circle over Afghanistan and hit targets that could not shoot back. Deploying them into Iranian airspace was a fundamental mismatch in doctrine, and Iran exploited it using the same passive infrared methods that tagged the F-35. Then there are the 3 F-15E Strike Eagles. On day 2, March the 1st, all 3 went down over Kuwait in what Central Command described as a friendly fire event triggered by Kuwaiti air defenses. All 6 crew members ejected safely. 3 frontline American fighters lost to a single friendly fire incident that does not occur in modern combat. No comprehensive explanation has been offered. The incident is still under investigation. Each F-15E carries a price tag of roughly $87 million. That is $261 million gone before the war was 2 days old. Add the KC-135 tanker that crashed in western Iraq on March the 12th, killing all 6 crew, in an incident the military said resulted from neither hostile nor friendly fire. 13 American service members dead, approximately 200 wounded. Those are Pentagon-confirmed figures. But those aircraft losses, devastating as they are not what prompted the 5-day pause. The real reason is what Iran did to America's ability to see, and that story is far worse. On the opening day, February the 28th, Iranian forces struck the AN FPS 132 block 5 early warning radar at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Satellite imagery confirmed the impact. Debris from one of the radar's 3 phased array faces scattered across the roof. This is not something you tow behind a truck. The AN FPS 132 is a massive fixed installation, an ultra-high-frequency phased array system that tracks ballistic missiles at ranges exceeding 5,000 kilometers. It provides 360-degree early warning for every layered defense network in the region. Qatar purchased it in 2013 for $1.1 billion. It was the only unit deployed anywhere outside the continental United States. Pentagon sources estimate it will take 5 to 8 years to replace. Iran targeted it first because removing it amplified every missile strike that followed. Once that radar went dark, every interception became harder. Every warning window narrowed. Most people think THAAD is some kind of invincible shield. In reality, THAAD is completely dependent on its radar. The AN, TPY-2 is THAAD's only sensor. Without it, you have a launcher sitting in the desert with no eyes. Only 16 of these radars exist on the entire planet. Each one costs between $250 million and $1 billion. Satellite imagery confirms Iranian strikes damaged or destroyed AN TPY-2 units at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, where photographs show a scorched site with 13-foot craters flanking 5 destroyed support vehicles. At Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, where a radar shelter was burned through. At Al Ruwais in the United Arab Emirates, where strike damage covers THAAD battery positions. And at Al Sadr, also in the Emirates, where 4 structures took direct hits within the first 72 hours. The Jordan radar was reportedly knocked out by Iranian drones, costing somewhere between $20,000 and $60,000 apiece. A $60,000 weapon eliminated a system worth up to $1 billion. That cost ratio tells you everything you need to know about the economics of this war. Total confirmed radar losses run approximately $2.7 billion. Total American equipment losses in the first 14 days are estimated near $4 billion. To fill the gaps, the Pentagon began pulling THAAD and Patriot batteries out of South Korea and redeploying them to the Gulf region. That means weakening deterrence against North Korea to patch a defensive network that is already torn apart. During the 12-day conflict last June, the United States fired over 150 THAAD interceptors, burning through 25% of its entire global inventory. Each interceptor costs $15.5 million. This war is consuming them faster. Iran's missiles cost a sliver of what it takes to stop them. And Iran can build replacements at a pace Lockheed Martin cannot match. Now the Navy. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive warship ever constructed at $13 billion, caught fire in its laundry compartment on March the 12th. It took more than 30 hours to contain. 600 sailors lost their sleeping quarters. 200 were treated for smoke inhalation. The ship had already been continuously deployed for almost 10 months, redirected from the Venezuela operation to the Middle East with no port call. Its 650 toilets kept failing. Crew morale had cratered. The Navy is now investigating whether the blaze was intentionally set by personnel trying to force an end to their deployment. The Ford sailed to Crete for repairs on March the 18th. It is functionally out of the fight. Meanwhile, satellite imagery revealed the USS Abraham Lincoln had repositioned roughly 1,100 kilometers from the Iranian coast, up from 350. The official term was controlled reallocation. The operational meaning is withdrawal. Both carrier strike groups moved beyond the engagement envelope of Iranian coastal weapons. Beijing took note. Moscow took note. And then there is the Strait of Hormuz, which might be Iran's most powerful weapon, and it costs nothing to deploy. Since approximately March the 4th, Iran has enforced an effective blockade using radio warnings, strikes on merchant vessels, and the collapse of shipping insurance. 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that waterway, around 20 million barrels every day. When Iran sealed it, the consequences were instant and global. Brent crude crossed $100 a barrel by March the 8th and later spiked to session highs near $119. Gulf oil output dropped by at least 10 million barrels a day by mid-March, the largest supply disruption in the history of the global petroleum market. The International Energy Agency released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, unprecedented. Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd suspended all Middle East shipping routes. Over 150 commercial vessels sat anchored outside the strait. At least 21 confirmed Iranian attacks on commercial shipping. Fertilizer prices surged from $475 to $680 per metric ton, directly threatening planting season across the American Midwest. Goldman Sachs raised the probability of a United States recession this year to 25%. India's Prime Minister Modi compared the disruption to the COVID pandemic and began repatriating over 220,000 Indian nationals from the Gulf. IEA Chief Fatih Birol stated on March the 23rd that 40 energy facilities across 9 countries had sustained severe damage and described the crisis as worse than the 1973 and 1979 oil shocks combined. The president delivered a 48-hour ultimatum on Saturday. Reopen the strait or your power plants get leveled. Iran's parliament speaker responded that any attack on power plants would result in the irreversible destruction of critical energy infrastructure across the entire Gulf. Iran's Defense Council warned that strikes on Iranian coastline or islands would trigger the mining of all Gulf shipping lanes. Iran specifically named Saudi, Emirati, Bahraini, Kuwaiti, and Qatari energy and water systems as retaliatory targets. That was the calculation on the president's desk Monday morning. Hit Iran's electrical grid and watch Saudi oil terminals and Emirati desalination facilities go up in flames. Oil at $200 a barrel, a global recession, or announce a pause and call it diplomacy. He picked the pause. Most people assume the air campaign is achieving its objectives and ground forces will never be needed. In reality, 5,000 Marines are already converging on the Gulf region. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,200 Marines deploying from Okinawa aboard the USS Tripoli. The 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,500 Marines from San Diego aboard the USS Boxer, accompanied by 2 additional amphibious assault ships. The 82nd Airborne has canceled exercises, fueling speculation about imminent deployment. Pentagon planners are reportedly studying the seizure of Karg Island, Iran's main oil terminal handling 90% of its crude exports. Karg sits approximately 26 kilometers off the Iranian coast and 300 miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. It falls within range of every Iranian weapon still operational: ballistic missiles from inland tunnels, rocket artillery, explosive drone boats, shore batteries. One retired rear admiral stated it bluntly: if we take Karg, they shut off the valve on the other end. A former Army officer called the scenario something between a suicide mission and a self-inflicted hostage crisis. The president originally intended to wrap up the conflict before a scheduled trip to China at the end of March. That trip has been postponed. This was supposed to be a war fought entirely from the air. The fact that ground options are even being discussed 24 days into the campaign tells you the air offensive did not accomplish what it was supposed to. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi said it plainly on CBS on March the 15th. We never requested a ceasefire, and we have never requested even negotiations. We are prepared to defend ourselves for as long as necessary. He also said something that deserves attention. We were engaged in talks with the Americans when they chose to attack us, and that was for the second time. That second time is important. Iran was in diplomatic contact before the June 2025 strikes, and again before February the 28th. Both times, the bombs fell anyway. From Tehran's perspective, American negotiations are not an alternative to violence, they are a prelude to it. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who assumed the position after his father was killed on the first day of the campaign, has not made a public appearance since taking power. In a written statement for Nowruz, he called the war a profound miscalculation and declared that Iran had delivered a staggering blow to its adversaries. Iran's losses are enormous: over 1,400 dead, more than 18,000 wounded, 15 senior officials killed, residential neighborhoods in Tehran struck directly, and still Iran is the side that will not come to the table. Still launching missiles at Dimona and Arad inside Israel. Still striking American assets, including a Fifth Fleet Service Center in Bahrain and missile launches toward Diego Garcia, 4,000 kilometers from Iranian soil. Still keeping Hormuz shut. The Revolutionary Guard's message to Gulf states hosting American forces was direct. You offered your territory to attack us. We will not stay silent. Let me put this together for you. Iran rejected the ceasefire. Iran rejected negotiations. Iran rejected reopening the strait. The original blueprint called for 4 to 7 days of overwhelming air power followed by capitulation. We are on day 24. The Revolutionary Guard is still launching. The strait remains closed. The radar umbrella that once covered American installations from Jordan to the Emirates is functionally compromised. An F-35 was struck, more than a dozen Reapers gone. A $13 billion carrier in a Greek port. The other carrier 1,100 kilometers from the action. 5,000 Marines headed toward a ground campaign that nobody drew up in advance. Brent crude hovering near $100. The International Energy Agency calling this the worst energy disruption in history. Both governments telling their populations they are winning. Both narratives containing assertions nobody can independently verify. Hold the same skepticism for Central Command claiming its aircraft operate with impunity as you hold for Iran claiming 104 drone kills. The truth sits somewhere between those two stories. And what it tells you is this: neither side prepared for what is actually unfolding. Now, I am not going to pretend I have the answer to this, but I will tell you what I know from experience. When you are in that office and the plan stops working, the most dangerous moment is not the failure itself. It is the temptation to double down, because admitting the miscalculation feels worse than absorbing the losses. I have seen it. I have felt it. The country has survived worse. But it only survived because at certain moments, people in positions of responsibility chose honesty over pride. That is what the next 5 days require. Not another ultimatum, not another reversal. An honest reckoning with what this war has actually become. The American people can handle the truth. They always could. They just need someone willing to give it to them. Thank you so much for watching. I would genuinely appreciate hearing what you think. Drop into the comments and share your perspective. What happens when those 5 days expire? Does this escalate, or does somebody find a way to step back? Tell me. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe and hit the like button. Click the video on your screen for more. I will see you soon.